you can live your life retired. Retired is about doing what you want to do, aligning those things you do along what you're good at and what you enjoy and what you value, and making sure that you don't let the hustle and bustle of things just carry you away.
Does talking about your money make you cringe? Are you tired of fighting about finances? Do you want to stop sabotaging your financial happiness? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to Breaking Money Silence, a podcast series aimed at helping all of us talk more openly about money. Your host, Kathleen Kingsbury, is a wealth psychology expert who is doing what she does best, speaking about taboo topics. International speaker, author, and founder of KBK Wealth Connection, Kathleen understands money and our relationship with it. Over the past decade, she has empowered thousands of people to break money silence at home and at work. Now, here is Kathleen.
I am really thrilled to have Louis Wray from Investing You joining the Breaking Money Silence podcast today. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks for asking me to be a guest today.
Yeah, I'm really interested in what you are studying and what are you offering in the financial space, and just want the listeners to know a little bit about who you are to give us some context to our conversation. So can you tell me just a little bit about your background and also just at a high level about Investing You?
Sure. I spent most of my time as a financial planner and wealth manager, wealth advisor for many years. I was a later corporate executive, a partner with a large investment firm in the United States, and retired from that position, left to start a program that really focuses in on the connection between money and life satisfaction. And a lot of my education and further endeavors from that point forward have been tied to that area.
Yeah, and so the idea of, in the work that you've done in positive psychology and connecting money to values really fits with what we talk about here on Breaking Money Silence. So that's what I really wanted to delve into today, because, previously we haven't talked much about positive psychology, what that is and how that intersects with our relationship with money. So can you tell me a little bit about what positive psychology is and how it can be used to improve somebody's relationship with money?
Yeah, I think in its simplest form, if we were going to use a numerical scale, and we looked at psychology as a whole, in the past, psychology was solely focused on helping people get better, people that were not functioning well. So if you look at it in a numerical scale, let's just call it normal psychological endeavors that we're familiar with, focuses on the important job of moving someone from, let's say, a -5 as a baseline to a 0, which is a normally functioning baseline. Positive psychology, which has probably came out mostly in the late 90s and has really grown significantly since then, looks at and focuses on how would we move someone who's already normally functioning psychologically from a 0 set point, let's say, to a +5. And what can we do? What do we know is out there? What's been studied? What's been proven? And that's where it spends most of its time.
And so I know you've applied the positive psychology tenets to money psychology, investing. And so tell me a little bit about how you made that leap from, this field of positive psychology to applying it to money. My
whole aspiration was always around the application of money. I just happened to find positive psychology as an outstanding science that gave validity and structure to where my passion was. So I guess I started without going into too many details. And back when I mentioned I was in the corporate America in the finance area with a financial firm, I was put kind of charged to create a new program. And the program that I created was centered around re-envisioning retirement at that time. Mm-hmm. And look at retirement, not just to get enough money, but what retirement should look like and how that money might be used strategically to give the best situation. So with that in mind, I guess positive psychology was just starting to come into focus at that time. And a friend of mine actually said, Louis, you might want to check this out. So there's a gentleman, Martin Seligman, who's considered by many to be the founder of positive psychology. And at that time, he was starting an applied master's degree in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. And the applied was the key word, as it turned out. And he wanted people to apply positive psychology to several different disciplines. And so I applied under the discipline of finance, and they were very interested in that because there was a lot of connection between the study of positive psychology and the role that money plays in creating the good life. And so I was fortunate to be accepted in the very first class, very first master's program ever in positive psychology. There's some interesting people in there, which we'll save for another story, but another time. But it turned out to be a perfect fit and really started to help my mind to expand into how positive psychology and finance is just meant for each other.
Yes. Yeah. That money and emotions connection, it's interesting because my background prior to doing what I've been doing for the past decade or so has been in the field of psychology. And certainly for me, there was this transformation between, seeing people as sick. And certainly there are some issues where people need to be diagnosed, but also looking for the strength in everybody, whether you had a mental illness or whether you were, functioning and hit a bump in the road in terms of just life. And so positive psychology, I think, does a lot of what I do in coaching of looking at what the strengths are and looking at what the values are and how can you pull for the positive and for people building up their strengths. And so, when you're thinking about from a generational standpoint, do you think that millennials more than any other generation are more focused on values and living according to kind of what their dreams are or what their not goals, but what their values are than previous generations? Or maybe they just talk about it more and post it more on social media. I don't know.
Well, being a father of 3 millennials, it's probably a little bit of both of that. But it is funny that you bring that up, Kathleen, because when we first started to create our whole program, we were focused on life transition more than anything and looking at people, maybe divorcees, maybe empty nesters, maybe pre-retirees. But there's no question it was life transitions that were a little more along the line of the lifespan. And as we started to give presentations and do different events, it was really the millennials that seemed to first and foremost step up and say, this is really cool. This is how I kind of envision my financial future looking and moving forward. And I think the reason for that is that millennials are, from an early stage, they looked at what happened to their parents or to their, and they saw that connection to the company line didn't always work out all that well. And sometimes, for whatever reason, dad was there and devoted, or mom, to the company, but then the company wasn't as devoted to them when it came down to the end, when it was really important to finalize the touches of that retirement plan or whatever it may be. And I think millennials got a sour taste on that, and maybe in a right way. That's one thing. But I do believe that they're more connected with their values. And so the things that we do in our company, which is called Invest in You, it really lends itself to someone who wants to discover themselves, their values, and then apply their money toward that. And millennials or whether it be Generation X or whatever it may be, they really, we as baby boomers, I'm a baby boomer, and it was really kind of an event, retirement, or I'm going to get to this point where I have this much money that I can start living and start doing this or that. And with millennials, it's been more, no, I want to live that way right from the beginning. And it's not always I want to live high on the hog, and not at all. In fact, millennials in some regards, they spend less time on things like big fancy homes than we did, and more they're more in tune with those things that really drive well-being, like experiences and connection to values, friends, relationships. So yes, this does connect well with millennials because most are saying, I want to start now on my living, and I want it to continue to grow throughout my lifetime, not work continuously for the company and then hope that it all lands at age whatever, 62, whatever that might be, and to where I start living the retired life at that point. It's not the same vision that the millennials have. And I think that values-based, strengths-based approaches, which are very much in kind of threaded into what positive psychology is all about. It fits quite well with millennials.
Yeah, I think so. And, it's funny. I was just saying, because I did a interview about millennials and are they entitled? And it was very interesting. That was kind of a myth that was bust open. And it's really like they're entitled to what they believe and what they want and how values and experiences are really important. And as an older Gen Xer, like you couldn't be any older and still be a Gen Xer. Is where I am. I'm right on the cusp. And I was brought up with the exact same version of retirement. And so now that I'm at this place in my life, my husband and I joke because we're still, far off from the traditional retirement, but we're practicing retirement and living it, day in. And it really, I think the millennials are onto something, quite frankly. It makes you feel much happier. You know where your money's going towards what's important to you. And I know you do a lot of work in that area of helping people kind of put those two things together.
Yeah, and to the point that you brought up, I tell a lot of folks that I speak with, and I coach a lot of financial advisors in this regards, that your client may want to get to a point of being retired, and to what you said, you and your husband, you can live your life retired. Retired is about doing what you want to do, aligning those things you do along what you're good at and what you enjoy and what you value, and making sure that you don't let the hustle and bustle of things just carry you away. So a lot of times, even, a person may be in their 60s and still working. To one person, that may sound like drudgery. Why would they ever want to do that? And to another person, it might be a part of a perfect life design. So I think that retirement, it has to be categorized by what it means to each person.
Yeah. And so I do a lot of work around the human side of finance, which is similar to what you're doing, and really being able to individualize, if you're a financial advisor, being able to individualize those conversations. And I know often what ends up happening is time. And it seems like the tool Investing You really helps advisors with the time. For people who are listening in that aren't advisors, I do also think it's very helpful because it's going to allow you to connect very quickly with what your values are and what's important to you. And so I want to talk a little bit later about how we can use this tool to break money silence and facilitate the conversations, Louis. But I think it's a good point to talk a little bit about the tool. I had an opportunity to go through and take the tool, and I got to tell you, it was very easy to do. It was pretty quick, and it really validated what I thought was important. Now, I don't have my report in front of me, so don't quiz me or anything. But tell me a little bit, or tell the audience a little bit about, the tool and how it's used by a consumer through, an advisor's office.
Well, before I do that, just why do we have these types of tools? So some of the real tenets of positive psychology, let's just say, happier people or more joyful people do more often than those who have been shown maybe not to be in quite that type of a position. And so if you go back to and this is why we created a strengths and values tool to begin with. If you go back to the science of happiness, all the way back to Aristotle, who was probably one of the earliest, if not the earliest person who really kind of thought about this and wrote about it. Aristotle, William James, another one, Carl Rogers, and self-actualization, and all the way to today's present scholars. There are four things that continuously the research all the way through came up with that survived every single situation that happier people do more often in their lives, and one of them is they have healthy social relationships. So they don't necessarily have to have a ton of friends, but the ones they have healthy relationships. They have connections to something larger than self. In fact, this is one of the very biggest. Laura King, who's a researcher here, she's kind of a renowned researcher, University of Missouri, and she states that the link between well-being and volunteerism is so clear that people should quit reading self-help books. Start helping people. Rather than reading about it. And the other one is intentional activities that fit the person, and this is really where strengths and values become important. So intentional activities would be, people that are happier. Things don't just happen to them. They are intentional about those things that they choose to do. And if you look at intentional activities, the last one is that those individuals that are typically happier, they are connected better to their strengths and values. And so if you're going to look at intentional activities, for instance, which is a wonderful thing to start to think about when you start thinking about your financial plan, it's best to look at them through the lens of what am I good at and what do I enjoy, what resonates with me. So what we do, that's one of the reasons why we've created not just a open-ended question format where it's basically tell me what I ask you and I'll tell you what you just told me. But it's more of a discovery. It's what's called a psychometric test. And so, not to get too much into our details, but we've created a psychometric test and a values test psychometrically that measures those strengths and values that really not necessarily would point toward what I should do in an organization, should I be a doctor or a lawyer, but more toward what are those activities or intentional activities that would give me the most fulfillment and connect the most with me. And because from there, we believe, and we then build stuff. In many of those cases, there's some financial component to it. Mm-hmm. So then we build financial goals around those things, but we do it more in a discovery process.
Yeah, no, I love that I got to do the tool. Obviously I'm a psychology person and I love all this kind of stuff. But I also, when I was doing it, really took it from the standpoint of, one, how could this be helpful to the financial advisors that I work with? Two, how could this be helpful to the consumers? And also, what's the ease of use? And so I thought it was really interesting because I also was able, as you know, to have a little coaching session afterwards with one of your staff members. And so, and so, I really enjoyed that process, and I encourage people to seek this out if it's something that they're interested in. But most importantly, how do you think identifying your strengths and values and being intentional around your activities can help you can you use that to engage in a meaningful financial conversation? Is there a way in which either the tool can help with that or just the act of figuring out what's important to me can help with that?
Okay, so there's several areas that it could help, and I'm not going to go into all of them. Obviously know your customer better, and you as the individual investor know what's it all about? What are we tying this money to, which is always so important. There's two important things: to grow the money, but also to connect the money. So too often we spend our time on growing the money and not enough time on connecting the money, which really the research says the ROI, if you will, on money itself is not that good. The ROI on connecting money properly is outstanding. So I'm not one to profess to say that money doesn't buy happiness. I'll take the money if you're going to give it to me. But you have to be careful. You have to know how to spend it. You have to know what to spend it on and what types of things lead to better lifestyles. So one of the things that I think having a process for how you invest your money, which is really kind of the move of the future, I believe, in financial planning. One of the things is the research around hope. So if we can create hope is a sustaining thing. So it's not hopelessness. It's not hope from the standpoint of we're doomed, but more our own individual hope and excitement, okay? And so there's researchers that have studied if we're hopeful about something in our future and what that means and how that resonates with us. And so, as it turns out, there's two things that are important, what's called agencies and pathways. And the agency says, do I have the capability to do what I'm hopeful to do? If I'm hopeful to be a Major League Baseball player, but I can't make my Little League team, well, I don't really have that. And then secondly, the pathway. So the pathway says, if it's lining up with my agency, how do I start to create pathways that I can see myself going down, that this is going to happen? So as an investor, as an individual, we would be well served to start to create kind of our hope chest, all right, like young girls would do. And our hope chest would be aligned with our financial plan. I want to experience the Eastern European countries and the culture in 10 years. I want to own a sailboat in 5 years. I want to take my kids on a, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. and if we can start to create the agencies and pathways, which we can, the research actually shows that many people get more enjoyment out of knowing it's coming than actually participating in it. So there's 3 ways that you can get enjoyment out of your hope. One is an anticipation. That think of a vacation as you're going on. Unfortunately, with our situation, not many of us have vacations planned.
Right.
They've been canceled, but they will come back. And if you have a vacation plan, you get a lot of excitement once you have the vacation planned, as opposed to saying, someday I want to go to Hawaii. That doesn't do a lot for you. But if you know you're going to Hawaii, by golly, and you're going on November the 1st, and you're going with your husband, and you know where you're staying, you're starting to create, and you know what it's going to take financially, and you're putting money aside, the positive flow that comes out of that for your overall joy and happiness really starts to populate. And you use that throughout the summer as motivation.
As you're talking, one of the things I'm thinking about is what a great way to have a conversation. I mean, you could even, I think in general, without your tool, you can identify what's important to you, have a fun couples conversation or families conversation about what's fun. The other thing that I'm imagining is that you could have, like my husband Brian could take an Investing You test, I could take it, and then you could talk about that test together. So I think there's a lot of different ways in which it can be useful. So what's one of your core values or something that you're identified as is important to you? And I'll share one thing that's important to me.
Actually, Kathleen, if you really want to know, it's kind of ironic.
I do.
It might be a little bit creepy, but when I was looking at yours is very similar to mine.
Really? Is that why we get along so well?
I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, this is like a reflection of myself here. That I'm a lot of ways. So only nature. Nature's not as high. You are one nature girl, and physical activities are very high on mine. Accomplishment, learning, creativity. My top strengths is I'm a communicator, and I'm also a inspirer. It's also 2 of the 5 of your top strengths. That's kind of bizarre, isn't it? A little bit.
It is bizarre, but it also makes sense why we're breaking money silence today and why we both believe in this positive psychology. And really the next generation teaching us that focusing on values, I think, is important and experiences. And so where can people find out more about what you're up to, Louis, and to be able to get more information about Investing You?
So you can go to investingyou.com and you can see everything that we're doing, where we're speaking. If you're an individual and you would like to have an advisor or find a financial planner that uses Investing You, if you want to email me at louis.ray with a W, louis.wray at investingyou.com. We can, depending on what area of the country you're in, we can let you know who uses our process for connecting money to life. And if you're an advisor and you'd like to go on our website, investingyou.com, and sign up with a person who's going to give you a live demo and how that might fit in your practice, you can do that by just going on our website, investingyou.com, and clicking on sign up for a demo.
Great. You know what, Louis, I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for breaking money silence with me today.
You bet. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Money Silence, hosted by Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, a wealth psychology expert, author, and founder of KBK Wealth Connection. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app and leave a review. Also, share this episode with your friends and family. It is a great way to get the conversation started. For more money talk tips and information, or to hire Kathleen to speak at your next event, go to www.breakingmoneysilence.com.